to Dr. Jitendra's talk. Dr.
Thank you,
Srinivas,
ma'am.
introduce him. You could share your screen, Dr.
Yes, ma'am. I'm doing. Is it visible? The screen is visible?
Yeah, it's visible and audible.
Thank you, sir. So,
yes. Dr. Srinivas? Signal is not there? Okay.
Hello.
I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Jitendra Jethani. After highly qualifying himself and stints in centers of repute, he now heads the Children Eye Care and Squint Center at Baroda, one of the most well-equipped center in the state. And he has a very huge list of awards and merits and large number of applications to his credit, and is going to be talking on managing children with esotropias. On to you,
thank
Dr.
you so much, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So I would give an overview of esotropia. Most of the talk would basically be about committant esotropia. I won't be covering Duane's, lateral rectus paresis, trauma, and really incommittent strabismus. So to begin with, this is the gold standard classification. I have taken it from Van Noorden. Basic divisions are three big divisions, that is committant, incommittent, and secondary esotropia. And committant esotropia, that would be the main focus of our talk. So committant esotropia can again be broadly divided into accommodative, non-accommodative, microtropia, and nystagmus blockage syndrome. I would be talking more about accommodative, non-accommodative, and a little bit about microtropia. I think nystagmus blockage syndrome is mostly covered, or at least partly covered by Dr. Rohit. So aspects to consider when you get a patient of esotropia is mainly an AC by A ratio, the time of onset, distance versus near relationship, cycloplegic refraction, and presence or absence of nystagmus. So accommodative esotropia can be broadly divided further into refractive accommodative esotropia, non-refractive accommodative esotropia, which has high AC by A ratio, a hypoaccommodative esotropia, and a partially accommodative esotropia. So this is what we are talking about when the patient wears glasses. Most of the esotropia is taken care of. So that is the refractive accommodative esotropia, which by definition is a type of esotropia which is restored to orthophoria in all positions of gaze by giving the optical correction. So refractive accommodative esotropia, which is part of accommodative esotropia, is corrected completely when you give the hypermetropic refractive error. Obviously, the etiology is that the accommodative effort which is required to cause the convergence, that is what causes the esotropia. The uncorrected refractive error, which is hyperopic refractive error, causes the resultant esotropia because of the convergence. The onset obviously would be around 2 to 3 years, and the angle would be larger at near than at distance, because the amount of accommodation we use is more for near than for distance, and angle would be variable depending on the general state of the patient, whether the patient is able to accommodate or not. So therapy is quite simple. You have to prescribe glasses, call the patient back again after a couple of weeks, and then reassess the patient. Most important thing is you have to use an accommodative target to see and assess, because you may miss esotropia for near if you don't use an accommodative target. Myotics, I think Dr. Surendran sir put a word that, if you want to use a drug, you can use myotics. I personally do not have any experience of using myotics in accommodative esotropia. Obviously, once we are, obviously, if you are using glasses and patient is orthotropic, then the surgical correction is not needed and it is in fact hazardous. So non-refractive accommodative esotropia would be an esotropia which is greater at near than a distance fixation, but it is unrelated to the uncorrected refractive error, which means that it is caused by an abnormally high AC by A ratio in presence of a normal near point of fixation, normal near point of accommodation. So this may occur with hypermetropia, this may occur with myopia, or patient may be emetropic for distance, and this is definitely greater at near than at distance. AC by A ratio is high and NPA is normal. So we would take a small break from esotropia, and we will try to see how to measure AC by ratio, because it is very important at postgraduate level to measure AC by A ratio, which is actually accommodative convergence divided by accommodation, which means that every unit of accommodation causes an amount of convergence in terms of accommodative convergence, because we know that convergence could be proximal, fusional, accommodative. So we have to see in this particular thing, what is the accommodative convergence. So we normally would try to impress upon that we should use gradient method because it has less false positives. So you have to measure the deviation after giving full cycloplegic correction, which means that the patient has been prescribed full cycloplegic correction, and then we are measuring the patient's AC by A ratio. We have to measure the deviation after addition of +3 diopter, or you can choose the amount of diopter and then you have to use that particular power for the division. Here we are using 3 diopters. So we measure the angle for near or for distance. So you can measure AC by ratio for near or for distance. So this is a small example. The near deviation is 30 prisms esotropia. The near deviation with 3 diopters is 6 prisms. So 30 minus 6 for near is around 24, which is divided by 3. This 3 is basically the amount of dioptric power that you have used, and this is 8. So normal AC by ratio is between 3 to 5. 6 is slightly on the higher side. 8 is definitely high. So this is a patient. In this particular patient, you have to use bifocals. One important thing is that the bifocal, the line which bisects the glass should pass just on the pupil or slightly above it. Mainly for children, it should pass slightly above it because children tend to have their glasses keep on going down. For this particular patient, this patient has no speds, so his glass won't come down. But in children, they have a nasal bridge, so their glasses keep coming down. Moreover, children need more bigger segment for near. So this is a patient you can see without glasses. He is having ESO. With glasses for distance, his ESO is gone, but he is using progressive glass. So you can use progressive glasses, but what you have to do is you have to reduce the intermediate segment and you have to increase the near segment. That is very important when you go for progressive glasses in children, especially when you are treating non-accommodative high AC by A ratio patient. This is regarding the treatment which we have already discussed. Hypoaccommodative esotropia, though slightly uncommon or slightly rare, is similar to high AC by ratio, except that here, for the want of more clear vision, patient has a higher esotropia for near due to an uncorrected hyperopic refractive error caused by excessive convergence. So patient has a uncorrected hypermetropic refractive error, which may not be true for AC by A ratio, high AC by A ratio. So in this particular case, the AC by A ratio will not be high, but the demand for glass or the demand for accommodation is higher, and this is what causes an increase in esotropia. So what is the difference between the two? The difference between the two is that there is a remote near point of accommodation, smaller deviation for distance, and large angle for near in cases of hypoaccommodate. Mainly the difference is remote near point of accommodation, which is normal in high AC by A ratio patients, and partially accommodative esotropia, which is the 4th type of accommodative esotropia. As the heading says, it is when the accommodative factors do contribute to the amount of esotropia, but only partially. This could be with infantile esotropia also. So here, the total amount of deviation is not cancelled by glasses. Once you give glasses, there is some residual esotropia even after full hyperopic or bifocal prescription. So this is the non-accommodative element of esotropia, which can be corrected. If it is large enough, we can correct it by surgery. Important point is that we have to correct only the non-accommodative element of esotropia and not the full esotropia. So it is important to tell the patients and parents that even after surgery, they would need glasses, except that with glasses, his squint will be completely corrected. So this is a small algorithm. Uncorrected hypermetropic refractive error. There is a retinal image blur, can cause accommodation. This can cause accommodative convergence. And if there is no effort for accommodation, then there will be orthophoria, but there will be ametropic amblyopia. And if there is accommodative convergence, there could be insufficient fusional divergence. This causes refractive accommodative esotropia. Didn't get that. What was that? Hello?
Some disturbance, you please continue.
Okay, so sufficient, if there is a sufficient fusional divergence, the accommodative convergence is nullified and patient will have esophoria. We will see that these particular esophoria patients may get converted into esotropia. We will see one of the patient, and if there is a low or flat AC/BI ratio, may even not become an esotropic patient. This was regarding the accommodative esotropia. Now we come to non-accommodative esotropia. The major part of non-accommodative esotropia is taken by infantile esotropia, but there can be non-accommodative convergence access. With normal AC/BI ratio, patient has large angle for near. Acquired or basic esotropia, there could be acute onset esotropia, like we have seen some patients in lockdown, which were actually uncorrected small hyperopic error patients. Because of improper fusional divergence amplitudes are less, they go into esotropia. Then there is divergence insufficiency or paralysis, where you will have esotropia only for this distance, cyclic esotropia, quite rare, and recurrent esotropia, which comes back even after surgery. So the most common out of all this non-accommodative is essential infantile esotropia. It manifests the deviation within the onset between the birth and 6 months, but it is known as infantile esotropia and not congenital esotropia. After 6 months, it is referred to as early acquired esotropia. So if it is before 6 months, it is infantile esotropia, and the prevalence is 1%. So these are the consistent findings. See, it is very important that onset should be between birth to 6 months. There will be a large angle which is stable, and there may be, important point is that there should not be an apparent CNS involvement. Now, asymmetric optokinetic nystagmus, may be there.
Dr. Jitendra, your voice is breaking.
In these particular patients, abduction, excessive adduction, patient may have DVD. Hello?
Yeah, your voice is
may
breaking.
Have dissociated deviation along with, now it is coming. Now, am I audible now?
Yeah.
So there may be anomalous head posture, mainly because of the large angle in CNCS syndrome. This may be hereditary. And the nystagmus, and the nystagmus is mainly manifest latent nystagmus, but latent nystagmus is obviously nasally directed drift of non-fixing eye, followed by a fast corrective saccade in the temporal direction. And we will also talk about optokinetic nystagmus asymmetry, which is nothing but it shows that the esotropia was there in very early life. So basically, what is an optokinetic nystagmus? Optokinetic nystagmus is elicited by rotating a drum. Basically, there is a smooth pursuit movement which goes along the moving stripes, followed by a corrective saccade. So the fast phase is on the opposite side of the drum, on the side which the drum is moving. So pursuit movements are difficult to elicit when drum moves in nasal to temporal direction, and this is known as Okain symmetry, which occurs if the binocular function is disturbed very early in life. So it is not a true sign of infantile esotropia. It can occur even in DRS patients, but the point being that it does give you an idea that this is an infantile esotropia or it is a late acquired onset esotropia. So what are the goals of treatment? Mainly, you have to start the treatment of esotropia is you start with cycloplegic refraction. That is the most important thing. Once you have seen the patient with glasses, you measure the angle, you see for near and distance. Most important is use an accommodative target to check the patient for near and distance, both. Then once you find out that even after giving the glasses, either it is partially accommodative esotropia or infantile esotropia, then you decide that you need to do a surgery or not. I don't have any experience with chemodenervation, so I will not take that in detail. There is a small subset of patients who have non-accommodative convergence axis where esotropia is larger at near than at distance. In an optically corrected patient with normal AC/BI ratio, this is known as a true convergence axis where AC/BI ratio is normal, NPA is normal, and glasses don't have much effect on the angle of deviation. So treatment obviously is surgical, and the treatment is bimedial recession because both the medial rectors are mainly responsible for convergence. Acquired non-accommodative esotropia is of gradual onset, mainly after 6 months of age, where near deviation equals to distance deviation, does not improve much with glasses, does not change much with glasses, and AC/BI ratio and normal NPA. Now, this is if you have an acquired esotropia patient, I would suggest that we should do a prism adaptation trial. This is how it can be done. If the angle is 20 diopters, you can correct 20 diopters, see the patient again, and at the same working distance, you can see the patient, and if the patient gets corrected by 35 prism diopters, then the amount to be corrected is 35 prism diopters. So we'll skip this. Okay, esotropia and high myopia. This could be unrestrictive. This could be restrictive. I think Dr. Shruti showed good slides about it. I will not go much into details of this, except that the multiple theories, how does it occur? We'll move on to the surgical options for esotropia. Most commonly done surgery is bimedial recession. Unilateral recession and resection can also be done. This could be done with or without intraoblique or supraoblique surgery. So if there is an intraoblique deviation and supraoblique deviation, you can supraoblique overaction. We can do intraoblique or supraoblique weakening along with bimedial recessions. For V pattern and A pattern, there can be displacements, and we can do bimedial recession with fade-in of the medial rectus. And if the angle is very large, we can do a true muscle transplantation also. This was a recent patient. This is what I call lockdown esotropias. So these are the patients I was talking about, children who have small hyperopic refractive error of around 1.25. This is acquired, this is non-neurological, but this is with a small hyperopic refraction, they were able to manage because of good divergence amplitudes. And they were mainly either esophoric or they were orthophoric, but because of excessive near work, they have gone into complete esotropia. We have seen around 4 to 5 patients whom we are planning to operate also, because they are not improving by, we have reduced their near work, patching, we have given classes, we have followed the normal norms, but these patients do require surgery because the deviation is very large and they are not improving further. Now, this is just a small list of non-corrected. We are moving to the last part, which is microtropia. Microtropia is ultra small angle of strabismus. What and how much is small, there is a big discussion on that. So I will not go into the details of this, but it could be secondary to treatment of large strabismus. There could be a small residual deviation. This could be secondary to anisometropia, secondary to unilateral macular lesion. And then these are some fixation sensory adaptations. Patient can have central fixation, can have an eccentric fixation with an ARC where the angle of anomaly is larger than the degree of eccentricity of fixation, which is unharmonious ARC, and an angle of anomaly which is identical to the degree of eccentricity, which is harmonious ARC. So ARC would normally occur in microtropia, and there would be a small relative photoma on the fovea, and there will be stereoacuity, but this could be defective. So these are the variable findings of microtropia. That was all regarding esotropia. I hope I was on time.
Thank you very much. You were not on time, but I think the talk was very good.